Now you can hear Military Matters Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard and Sundays at noon on Wreaths Across America Radio, available on the iHeart Radio, TuneIn and Audacy apps. This episode is brought to you by Homes for Our Troops, a nonprofit helping build and donate homes to injured post 9/11 veterans. Visit hfotusa.org for more information. And welcome to another Fast Take. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Jack Murphy.
And we are talking about last week's episode about Task Force Dagger. It is a organization helping the families and service members, veterans of the special operations community. And you know, it's funny because we don't really do a lot of stories about specific organizations and charities unless it's really related to something in the news. So you heard us talking about some of the organizations that were involved in evacuating people out of Afghanistan during the closeout of that particular theater. But Task Force Dagger is one of those organizations that I think transcends a lot of the headlines in the news simply because of what they're doing and the mission, the people behind the mission, and really a lot of the inter-organizational cooperation that we've seen Task Force Dagger do, working with other orgs to fulfill the mission of helping those families and service members and veterans. So, Jack, you had a chance to talk with these two wonderful people down there at Task Force Dagger. What inspired you to kind of take on this interview and talk with them? And what was your big takeaway, man?
Oh, well, I had heard of them before, but I actually met those people when I was at Soft Week in Tampa. They had a, standout, and they were, advocating for the charity and what they do. And so some of them came up to me and we started talking, and they started telling me about the different endeavors they have going on. And I was like, okay, this would make a great episode, of Military Matters. So when I got home, we scheduled that. It came together pretty easily. And, as far as the big takeaway, I mean, some of the issues that they raised, where their charity fills in these gaps, that the U.S. government sometimes drops the ball on things, is not surprising to me, in the sense that, I saw it happen, back in the day when there unfortunately were not a lot of these charities that fill those gaps. We're lucky and fortunate that we now have these organizations that will fly the family members down to a hospital or to, God forbid, a funeral, that provide these sorts of services that, you don't really think about these kind of costs. But there are groups out there that do that. So anyway, I wasn't necessarily surprised by that. It was good, though, to hear, about, some of the work they do with DPAA, recovering MIAs. That's really cool, a really unique thing that they do. But also the alternative treatments, again, filling gaps, the treatments that aren't necessarily offered by Veterans Affairs yet, like the Stellan ganglia block, one of those. So it's interesting to see them kind of jump in and kind of fulfill some of those needs for guys.
The therapies for PTSD are always those are subjects that always catch my attention, because it really does show the evolution of the VA and its perspectives on what treatment can look like. The stellate ganglion therapy, very interesting, folks. If you haven't heard about it, highly encourage you to go out there, do a little research, talk to your doctor about it. If you think it's good for you, definitely talk to your doctor about it. There's also the ketamine therapies that are happening right now. The VA, I believe, is funding certain therapies related to ketamine treatment. Again, I'm not very sure about all that stuff, but it is something that you'd have to go research on your own, or go talk to these organizations like Task Force Dagger. They have folks that are deeply embedded in these types of research, and they'll tell you whether or not the VA is paying for it, how it works, and whether it could work for you. You talked a little bit about the stellate ganglion therapy, and that seems like something you have looked into yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is? And I mean, is it working?
I've never done it myself. I just researched it a little bit. So the stellate ganglia block, essentially it is a nerve block. That's kind of what it boils down to. For people who don't know, I mean, military medics are certainly familiar with this term. If a soldier gets a limb blown off, an amputation or something like that, there's a technique called a nerve block where they can take a needle and go into where the nerves are, and actually inject medication around it, like painkiller around it. And it deadens the nerve to the point that, like if somebody has a hand blown off or something, they can actually get back up on their feet and walk themselves to the medevac. I mean, the nerve block is an effective and useful technique in the field, when they're needed. So the stellate ganglia block is a specific type of nerve block that is done for people who have head pain, like from a car crash or whatever it is. So they actually go in through the neck and they inject the medication around this nerve that is coming out of your vertebrae. And so it was designed to treat like upper body pain. But what they have found is that it is having some positive effects in treating people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress. So I'm not a doctor, and I don't think the medical literature has quite kept it hasn't quite caught up to this yet. I mean, this treatment is being administered by doctors, and it is in a clinical environment showing to be helpful. But I don't think the research has totally caught up as far as like how effective it is and what cases it should be used, et cetera. I think maybe the research hasn't caught up quite yet, but it is showing positive effects. It's not BS. It's not an old wives' tale. It's not pseudoscience. There is something to it.
Definitely don't take all your medical advice from two guys on a podcast. Do your research. We are not Joe Rogans. I always encourage people to go do your own research and definitely sit down and talk with your doctor. And here's one last thing I'm going to tell you about your doctor. If you've got a doc you've been seeing for a couple of years, I don't care if they're like, the old school country doctor where they're like, well, what you need is a little Pappy's medicine, whatever. Not all doctors are built the same. Doctors have varying degrees of exposure to different types of theories, different types of treatments. So if the first doctor is telling you something that you don't necessarily agree with, seek a second opinion. Go out, find a couple of doctors and compare and contrast their opinions and figure out what works for you. That's about as far as I'll get into medical advice. That's about as far as I'm willing to go. One of the things that was interesting about this interview is this came up around the same time I saw an article about these military organizations, these military charities. And one particular situation just arose not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, actually. One of I think it was the female Marine, her body was shipped back from Afghanistan after she was one of those 13 that were killed during an explosion at the front gate during the evacuation period. Her body had been evacuated back to her family, I think in Colorado. I could be wrong. So please, somebody double check that. But either way, she was flown back to her hometown, and apparently there was some issue with the government and funding and whatnot. They're like, we're not going to ship you to.
So I think this one got debunked.
Good.
I think I was reading that the mother of the deceased was saying, no, that didn't happen. That we did not get invoiced. But there are cases. I've never heard of like the government not paying to transport a soldier's remains, but I mean, there are all kinds of cases where like, you have like elderly or family members or spouses, and the military is not necessarily paying for their travel to either come see their loved one in Walter Reed or to get to a funeral or whatever the case may be. And that's where a lot of these charity groups kind of fill that gap.
It would be very easy for me to remove and edit my thought on, this particular story. But, I'm going to keep this in. And this is kind of a message to my editor, who sometimes tells me, take this in, take this out, keep this in. But I think it's important to remember, like, hey, everyone can be duped. Everyone can read something even though it's coming from a source that looks credible, it doesn't always mean that we got the story right. And it's so funny because, like, as I'm talking right now, I'm watching Jack. He's flipping through his screen. He's probably looking
I'm looking it up. It was the story. Right. That story broke on Fox News, and I'm looking at it now. They have taken that story down.
There you go, folks. So because it came from a credible source doesn't always mean that we got the full story. But nevertheless, my point is still the same. And that point is that where bureaucracy ends and the points of hardship that can often plague a family, this is where these organizations come in. And this is when these organizations are even more vital and important. And one of the things that Task Force Dagger, especially in this interview, they were talking about was their ability and willingness to work with other organizations. So coming together to cover certain costs, coming together to attack certain problem sets. So, I'm not going to say go donate to Task Force Dagger. That is completely up to you. You do whatever you want to do with your money, folks. But I will say it's always good to give back in some way, shape, or form. So if there is an organization that is near and dear to your heart, whatever it is, and I hope that, introducing Task Force Dagger into your arsenal of organizations and charities, find the one that works for you and donate, give back, and all that great stuff. I think it's a feel good story in the midst of so many dark and terrible things. Just during our pre-record, Jack and I usually sit back and talk a little bit about all the different stories that are occurring, and it gets so grim. It gets really dark really fast. So when we get a chance to talk about a positive story like this, it's always a gentle reprieve for both of us. I would also recommend, if you're interested in learning more about Task Force Dagger and how it all started, there is a really great podcast out there called Softcast, SOFCAST. It's the official podcast of US SOCOM. Season 4, episode 6 is Mark Stevens. He is the chairman of the executive board of Task Force Dagger. He's also retired SMU operator of the Special Missions Unit. He is a Commando Hall of Fame inductee, and it's a great interview. He gets to talk a little bit about his career in special operations, fighting in Somalia, which is some crazy stories there. He has a great story about hitting back at Al-Qaeda right after 9/11. Some really cool stories about that. But he also discusses Task Force Dagger, how that came around, and some of the great stuff they're doing. So again, that's season 4, episode 6, Softcast. Go check it out. And Jack, is there anything you want to, any wise words, anything you want to part to the good people before we take off?
Man, go check out Iceland. Just got back from vacation. A fun time if you like the outdoors. There's just a little final note from your pal Jack.
Jack,
I'm not being paid for this Iceland endorsement.
Oh boy, do you hear that, folks? Iceland has bought him out. That's right. I don't even know what the hell they spend in Iceland. Ice dollars.
I think it's krona.
Krona
is the currency. Yeah.
Yeah. My God, you're such a Iceland shill. God. All right, folks. Well, make sure you would already know that Mr. Murphy had been spelunking ice caves with his kiddo and enjoying the world of Iceland. If you had been following him at Jack Murphy RGR on Twitter,
the company formerly known as Twitter, now it's X. What is it? What's going on, Jack? What are we doing there? It's like Prince, man. It's just going to be symbol.
The symbol, symbol. A money sign. All right, folks, that does it for us. That's Jack Murphy. Again, you can find him across all handles at Jack Murphy RGR. I'm Rod on Twitter. And of course, please follow us at Stripes Pod on Twitter. You can see the latest and greatest episodes that are coming out. In case you did not know, in case you didn't catch the memo, this is Jack's last season here at Military Matters. So
getting there. Going to start working. The next episode is interview with Paul Shari, expert on military artificial intelligence.
Holy smokes. The T-1000 is real. DARPA has it, and they will unleash it on us very soon. I can't wait. If I have to have my own personal apocalypse, I'm going to go the route of AI turning on us as opposed to aliens or zombies. I would rather fight AI. Seems like an easy fight. They're going to kill us all. I will show them where all the human resistance is. That's my fallback. Just side with the machines. But yes, this is his last season. The last episode of this season will be about Mr. Jack Murphy. So if you have questions, concerns, comments, if you want to call him names, complaints mostly, you can email us at militarymatters@stripes.com. Feel free to shoot us your questions and anything you want to know about Jack Murphy. We're going to be talking about his career, his books, his adventures and whatnot, and what lies in store for old Jack Murphy in the future. All that and more coming up. All right, folks, that does it for us. We will catch you at the next episode. Folks, be sure to head over to stripes.com and use promo code podcast to get 50% off your digital subscription to Stars and Stripes, the news source that has supported American service members no matter where they've been deployed to. Stars and Stripes has been there and continues to be there, so drop some characters in your address bar, stripes.com, promo code podcast, and lock yourself in for 50% off your digital subscription. This episode was brought to you by Homes for Our Troops, a nonprofit helping build and donate homes to injured post-9/11 veterans. Visit hfotusa.org for more information. Now you can hear Military Matters Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard and Sundays at noon on Wreaths Across America Radio, available on the iHeart Radio, TuneIn and Audacy apps.